it make sense to even explore agentic AI or AI in general for your small business? That's what we're talking about today, especially if you're outside the tech space. You might be wondering if all this nonsense that people keep talking about actually makes sense for you. Is it relevant? How is it relevant? And how quickly should you jump into it, if at all? So let's first break apart what agentic AI actually is. And I'm actually, let's just search here online to see what Google says. Agentic AI refers to an autonomous system that, unlike passive chatbots, acts independently to achieve complex multi step goals with minimal human oversight. So if I ask Claude, what is agentic AI? Let's see what it says. So Claude says, and it's thinking because we used Opus because why not? Agentic AI refers to AI systems that can autonomously pursue goals, make decisions, and take actions with minimum human intervention. Basically, the same thing, as opposed to traditional AI that simply responds to a single prompt and stops. And of course, here we're using sort of the LLM space, not necessarily AI in general. So, AI, speaking in the LLM space, we're talking about ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever you're using, that you interact by talking to it. You tell it something, gives you something back, etc. So a lot of us have used regular AI chatbots or conversational chatbots like ChatGPT to do tasks like ask it about something, maybe for a recipe, maybe for something related to work. Maybe we gave it an invoice and asked it to give us information about it. Maybe we gave it a spreadsheet and it helped us understand the spreadsheet. Maybe we gave it a contract and it helped it understand the contract as well. There's many uses for all of these tools, and you can decide what to do with them and whether you like them or not. But what we're doing right now, what we're talking about is what is the difference between a traditional, and I know it's funny because these just popped out like 2 or 3 years ago. What is the difference between the traditional LLM workflow based flows and agentic AI? So, if you've ever used one of the top of the line models that have thinking enabled, some of these models, you will notice that when you ask it to do something, instead of just getting a reply to you, they might go step by step into it. So they might actually be thinking. They're not thinking, but they're processing it and they're going through various iterations before giving you the final response. So they might say, oh, the person is asking me to do this and research this other thing. So I think I need to go and research this first. And then, oh, wait, maybe I first need to check if they're sure about whatever. And it might come back to you with something. And then they will continue. And then, oh, I think I need access to this account. And so it will try to get the account or ask you for the account and then do that. So it sort of does multiple steps in one turn instead of it having to always be going back and forth. And so the agentic AI is this idea of allowing the agents more freedom to do more things. We have been transitioning a lot of the specific discrete workflows. So let's say you have an NA10 or a Zapier or a Make.com or anything like that in your business where somebody or you or someone on your staff or a third party consultant created a flow where you have these nodes and you receive something from Stripe. Let's say an invoice gets paid and you want that invoice to then be processed and compared against a spreadsheet of your customers. And then you want that information to be put in your QuickBooks account or Zero or whatever you're using. And then from there, you might want it to generate a report automatically. And so you might have all these little steps built in a flow. So whenever something happens, it triggers the flow goes through, extracts information, processes it, simplifies it, summarizes it, whatever you're telling it to do. So it does it in multiple steps, but it's a discrete flow that you have to create. So someone has to go and create these flows. And it's okay, they work really well. But then if you want to do something else, you have to create another flow, which again is okay. But then if something changes, you have to go in and modify it. So you either have to know how these flows work and make adjustments to them or have someone do it for you. Agentic AI is this idea where you might have a chat window, whether it be Codex, the app itself, or Claude, or Claude Code, or any other various flavors as an app, the mobile app, etc., where you might instead give it skills. And these skills might be things like, oh, you have a way to fetch my email, or you have a way to connect to an MCP server, or connect to a tool like QuickBooks, or connect to Stripe, or connect to Google Sheets, whatever that may be. And if you give a tool like this these skills, then you can just have a conversation. So whether you're out and about and you're on your phone, or you're in your computer, you can now just in natural language tell it what you need it to do. So if in that particular moment you just want to tell it, hey, can you get all the invoices from this month and prepare a report for me, then at that moment, it will read the skill, understand exactly what steps you needed to do, and then go and do them. And there didn't need to be a flow created. So it could just go in, figure out the tools that it has access to, get all the data, create the report, and just give it back to you, or even send it to someone else directly in that moment in time. So it's very interesting because it's no longer something that's locked and that can break easily. It's something that is sort of self evolving or self healing, some people call it. We've created some where you're talking to it and it creates the output or whatever you asked for it. And then if you tell it, oh, you made a mistake here, it it is almost there, but we should have the images come from this other place, or we should have them in this other size or this other format. Then it might look at the history, it might look at the files if you're using Cloud Code or Codex, and then review them and not only fix the final output for you, but then it might suggest, okay, I fixed it. It looks good. I will also go ahead and modify the steps so that next time you run it, it does it properly. So it self heals in that sense, where it'll just do it on its own. So it can modify its own code or instruction set so that next time it gets better. It's really interesting to see that actually happening. Also, you can share these. So once you have a process that you like how it works, you can then share that with a colleague or coworker or someone or everyone in your company, and then they can talk to the tool and ask it to do these different things. So I found myself personally sort of leaning more towards that. And I think a big opener to all this was OpenClaw. When Peter Steinberger created OpenClaw, it became very popular, I think, because it was just so easy to interact with the agent just using your phone via Telegram, WhatsApp, or whatever that may be. So the fact that you could just have your phone and open a Telegram chat, for example, right now, and in that moment, exactly when you have the idea, ask it to execute. So that was a huge unlock for me because while yes, I have Cloud Code and Codex, and we use them all the time for the business because we create software and we create AI integrations and we create workflows for customers. Sometimes you're on the street and you just have an idea and you just want it to be done, or you want to run some research, things like that. So having that option to talk to the tools is amazing. One of the things that really excited me was one of the projects that we have is or was a little baby project that was just starting out, and it's a type of web application, and we sort of launched it and it started working. But then having a conversation, we were looking at it and saw, oh, it would be nice if it had a little bar at the top that gave us like top stories, like a ticker or sorts. And I said, hold on. And I just pulled out my phone and I told it, it would be nice if we had a sort of ticker for news or stories at the top. And I just sent that message. And then the thing goes and proactively figures out what I mean and codes it into the tool and then shows me a preview while we're still having the conversation. So that, regardless of side effects or whatever, we'll talk about that in a second. If you are exploring ideas and new interfaces or concepts, etc., it's so neat to be able to just tell it to do something and then pull it up or actually build it and show you what it's going to look like. Now, what's really powerful here is that it actually built it. And since nobody was using it at the time, we didn't mind that it was actually touching the production code. Later on, we added staging and all that, like we do for all our other projects. And now we do previews. But it was so fun to just see it do the thing and fix it. And then, like, even if it made a mistake, we could just say, oh, you went too far, or roll back and do this. It took 1 minute to figure out the issue, roll back, and then no one's the wiser. And of course, it was a hobby project. But you can still have it where you have the guardrails in place to where it only touches staging code or development code. And then you have rules in place so that only the person in charge, or who should be in charge, can actually deploy it to production. Right? And this is just talking about software in general. But this works for everything. If you are generating reports, if you are managing stock or inventory, maybe you have multiple systems for your inventory, and you have a warehouse here, a warehouse there. They all talk in different languages, different systems, etc. You can just connect your tooling to them such that even if you just want it to be read-only, it can pull all the data that it needs at certain intervals and create these reports for you on the fly without you having to have someone actually do them. So this opens up a lot of time for your team to focus on other things. So whether maybe they were just creating that report and take a lot of time, but it's always the same thing, you can have these tools create these. And I'm seeing a transition from needing a web interface or an application interface for everything, and to more of a, I just need to be able to ask it for things and have those things done. And of course, there's still space for, and will always be space for, some sort of interface, especially for tools that are data rich and you want to see a lot of data at the same time. Yes, we still need interfaces, but voice is an interface. It is still a way to communicate with a computer. And in my opinion, if done properly, you can ask it for the actual thing that you were looking for, and it can provide it to you in a very simple way, even just by talking to you or giving you an image of what that looks like. Then there's absolutely no point in needing to see the spreadsheet. Does that make sense? And leave your comments in the chat. So yes, sometimes we feel, I'm just thinking out loud here, but sometimes we feel, oh, I still need the thing to show me, like, I have to see the spreadsheet, I have to see where the data comes from. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, for what's the purpose of you seeing that interface? Like, why did you go in there in the first place? You probably were looking to do something. So if you went to the bank, you were probably looking to see your balance, or you were probably to see the transactions. Or if you went to your inventory, you wanted to see how much is available, how much is left, because you want to calculate how much you should reorder. Like, you typically have a purpose for going into an application. You want to go into your email. It's not to see if you have mail. It's typically if to see if there's something you need to do. Maybe someone's asking you a question. You want to respond to that question. So if we think about it in those terms, then most interfaces are not necessarily required if you can obtain the level of detail or the digested response that you're actually looking for. And again, yes, there are some instances where you need dashboards, security, other things where you need to see the data moving and have alerts and things like that. And sometimes our eyes will allow us to see many more things at once than what can be told to us, which might take time. But even in those cases, like if you think deeper, you need this dashboard where you're seeing everything that's happening, but really that's a lot of noise. You only want to hear what's really important. Like if there was a threshold that was passed. And this applies to factories, manufacturing. You're not looking at all the sensor data and seeing like, okay, is this looking good, etc. No, you have alerts. You have little red, yellow, green lights that tell you if something is outside certain thresholds so that you know that you need to act, or it's now, or soon, or later, or whatever. And if the system can get that already and just let you know proactively when something is happening or when something needs to be done, then that interface just becomes your chat or your voice communication to it, or your video communication to it. So it just changes the way we interact with the computer and our devices, from being the screen in a computer to maybe a TV somewhere, or a mobile device, or AR glasses, or whatever you're using, or just a headset, and be able to listen to those items. So it's becoming very interesting, especially when things are done properly. So of course, there are situations where you tell it to do things that it does the opposite. Like it does do, and well, that it probably won't do the opposite, but it might make a mistake, understand the wrong thing, and then execute something else. And so that's why, after OpenClaw came out, a lot has been put into making it safer, more secure, have guardrails. Like I just noticed earlier this morning that I was talking to. We use OpenClaw for very specific things. Again, more of the hobby side things, and then there are some things that we interact with it, but we have certain guardrails for it. But then I just noticed this morning, even in one of the hobby projects, that I was asking it. I'm looking over here because I have it here. I was asking it to do something specifically to push or create a new repository on GitHub. And whereas before I would just say, yeah, for sure, here I go. And since it has access to the command line interface and it can talk to it, it would just do it. But now in the newest version, it says, ooh, but since this is an action that will create something outside this computer, or that will do a send action, I should stop and ask the user. So I saw the thinking process there, and it sent me a message. I need to validate that you're okay with me doing it, even though it has all these permissions to do all sorts of stuff. So they're narrowing it down to be to be safer, especially with it being acquired by OpenAI, and then NVIDIA's CEO talking about how that's the future. And I think a lot more people are going to start to use it. So putting in those guardrails and protections is good, because if someone just installs it and just lets it do stuff blindly, it can be a real danger. That aside, fantastic tool, fantastic idea. And then I really liked that people like the team at Anthropic started adding a lot of these features into Cloud Code in a safe way. So if you already trust Anthropic to be able to use Cloud Code, to be able to use their co-work feature, etc., they added the remote thing, so you can just remote connect to it and talk to it in your phone to the instance that you have in your computer. And then they added the what are they called? I don't know. Sessions? I don't know. I haven't used that feature, but they added this feature which allows you to connect to it via tools like WhatsApp and Telegram. So basically, it's bridging that gap between the full-on OpenClaw thing where you install the thing, you just let it loose on a computer, and then this sort of narrower scope where you can still talk to it in your other interfaces, which is really nice, without giving it a lot of access. And then yesterday, I believe, they released the computer use, where now it can actually use the computer and go in and click on things in the computer. And if you're doing it safely or with certain care, it's super powerful, because you can imagine if we're already talking about these tools where you just talk to it to ask it to do things. One of the examples that we see often is I need a sort of scraper. For those of you who are not technical, a scraper is basically a tool that can go somewhere and fetch information that you want to store or consume or process. For example, there are many events. Maybe there are a lot of live events, and you want to learn what all these live events are. But you have to go to 5 or 6 different websites to figure out all the live events that are coming to your town. So a scraper might visit all these events places and get a list of all these events for you, and then you can have a summary of them and you can filter them out, etc. And you don't have to go to each of their websites. Now, imagine if you're like a very big live events fan and you love country music. So you don't care about anything else. You just like country music. And so if you go to all these websites, you're going to be spending 5-10 minutes every time you want to check that. And if something new comes up, and maybe there are tickets, and maybe it's very popular, and tickets get sold out, etc., you want to be on top of things. So you have access now to these tools. Let's say you have Claude, you can use Cowork, whatever you want to use. They have multiple flavors. You can now say, even in the browser, there's a browser extension for Chrome. You can go on it. You can go to the website. You can record this little record thing. You can say, visit this website. Look at all the events, go to the next page, go to the next page, go to the next page, add the filters for country music, and store them in a spreadsheet, wherever, in a file. Then go to this other page and do this, and you show it how to do it. Then go to this other page. So you tell it how to go to those 5 pages that you typically go to. And then you can tell it, now do this 3 times a day at these times. And we'll just do it in your browser, in your computer. It'll just do it. You don't have to code anything. You don't have to program anything. It's just doing it, storing everything. And then you can have another thing that just runs every day, every morning, or whatever you want it to run. That will then summarize all that. And based on your parameters, because maybe you like specific bands, so it can trigger some that have higher priority because of what you like, or because there are less tickets available, or because you know there's going to be a lot of engagement for that particular one. I don't know. You can then tell it every morning, give me a morning brief that includes all of these events, or during the day. If you find something that's going to sell out fast, just send me an email immediately. Give me the link, and then I can click and do it. Of course, you can have it also do extra things for you. But if you see this very simple example, it now really works like an assistant where you could tell someone to do something, or you could just tell this thing to do it for you and you can guide it and there's no code involved. And it does it. And it does it relatively well. Now, there was this video I was watching from Andre Karpathy. I don't know how do you say the first name. Sorry. Um, he was saying that all the coding he's done, and I've heard this from many people, has been null for the past few months. It's just telling the LLM to code stuff for you. You review it, etc. if you want, or have processes for it, but you're not really writing code like you were writing code maybe a few months ago or a couple of years ago. So it's very interesting. But what he was saying is that now, if the thing does not do what you want it to do, it's mostly a skill issue in the sense that you might not have explained it properly. So the gap now becomes, how talented are you at understanding what you really need and how you explain it to the tool? So if you're very good at explaining your requirements, it will do it. It will do it very well. And you can do almost anything you want. Because programming language wise, it knows everything. And tool wise, it can know mostly everything about most tools, even at least the popular ones, because there's documentation. It can read the documentation. And many tools now even have MCP servers, or little, just call them connectors, that allow the LLM to understand how their documentation works. And so it can understand exactly how the tool works. So if it knows how to program perfectly in any language, and then it can also understand tools and their documentation, how they work, then it can pretty much do anything. But if you don't explain exactly what you need and you don't think of edge cases, then that's where it might not produce exactly what you're looking for. So that is really what it's coming down to. It's more of a, how good at you are how good are you at communicating? And if you are not good at communicating, don't worry. You can also use the AI to help you figure out the things that you don't know. So if you're using Cloud Code or Codex or Gemini, whatever you're using, you can tell it to plan something. So use the plan features. It's very good. The plan feature just sort of goes in depth and figures out what it needs to do and shows you a plan for it before actually building anything. But apart from that, make sure you tell it to interview you and ask you anything that is not clear or immediately clear. Well, what that does is that it will then give you questions so that you can answer and give it clarity. And then you can ask and do it back and forth, and do this process where you're talking to it until the scope is completely clear. And then it can have a good plan that it can then implement and build the whole thing. And then now we can go into skills and things that exist, which are instruction sets, mostly written in natural language that you can understand, but some of it has code that can help even someone who has never developed software understand security implications and scalability and things like that. So these extra skills can then be installed if you're careful from where you get them and all that. That's another conversation. You can then build something and then say, use this skill to make sure the front end is accessible and looks good, etc. And so it goes and adds some extra layer of understanding instructions so that it can build it very nice, and it will make a world of a difference. And then make sure you're following security best practices. Use the security skill, and it can use that skill to make it secure, to make sure you're not having any publicly accessible endpoints, or you're not leaking credentials or things like that. And there's many of similar things as skills that you can use. So I've found myself recently, just instead of building or ideating the, okay, I'm going to build a web app for this thing, for something I want to do, now it's more of a, how can I do an agentic flow where I just talk to my Cloud Code or Codex or OpenCloud, whatever you want to use, and just tell it what I want. So even we built a website that has a lot of content, and a lot of it is brought in from different platforms. But I was building the interface, the admin interface you typically build, so that you can add new things or edit things. But then I found myself seeing that it's much easier to just tell it, oh, this event has a typo. Can you just fix it? And it'll go in the database, find the event, and fix the typo. Or, oh, this seems to be stale data. Can you get the new data from the website? And it'll know which website to go and get and fetch it and process it and put it in the database. And that's it. And you never had to touch the admin interface. So it becomes, again, a paradigm shift of, now you just talk to the things in natural language, which I think that was the whole idea when the computers were first envisioned. It's a thing that you can talk to and get it to do things. But originally, the software, the hardware, there just wasn't possible to do that the way we have it now. So you had to create programming languages, and you had to create software, and you had to create operating systems. But where we are now, I think we've successfully gone into the space where we actually can just talk to it and have it do things, which is amazing. So that's what I want to talk about. If you have a small business and you're looking to see how this all fits in, just think about what processes you're currently doing by hand that you feel that are repetitive. That's a great place to start. If you're just always doing something with invoices, always doing something with spreadsheets, always doing the same sort of thing, that can very likely be automated. And now you don't have to do it with code. You may want to do it with N8N or Zapier or something like that. But then there's also the agentic versions of this, which are more flexible. And of course, you have to be more careful and everything. But if you do it with someone that also do what they're doing, then you could do something very well. But even if you just want to experiment with it, that's the fun part. Just try it. Like, there's nothing stopping you from opening Claude or even Claude Code and watching a YouTube video, see how it works a little bit, and just experimenting, grabbing some files, telling it, here are the files. What can you read from them? And you'll be surprised by their OCR capabilities, how it can understand a PDF, what's inside it, and you'll see that you can literally give it documents and it'll process them and then give you something out, and then you can say, oh, great, now can you put that information in a spreadsheet? And then it'll say yes, and then I'll put it in a spreadsheet. And okay, can you modify the columns? Can you add a formula? Can you do a VLOOKUP, etc.? And it'll do the things for you. So once you see it doing it and you see that it's done a good job, then you can say, can you create a skill for me so that it's repeatable and I can share with someone? And then it'll create this thing called a skill for you. And now you can create a new conversation, no context, nothing. It could be just a blank conversation. You just tell it, I'm going to give you some invoices. Please process them. Give it that, and that's it. There's nothing else you need to do. It'll understand what you want it to do, and it's incredible. It saves you so much time, but the experience is also better, because whether you do it via text in the chat thing, or you do it via WhatsApp, or Telegram, or whatever that may be, then it's the experience gives you freedom, if you want freedom, to do other things. So while I'll give you an example. This morning, I may have needed to finish something and sit in my computer to finish it. And that may have taken time from being with our little girls during breakfast time, which is something I don't want to do. And so what I did was I told the agent to do what I needed to do, and I just left it there close by so I could monitor it. And that way I could be with the girls and enjoy breakfast time like we always do every day. And so I would get a ping on my phone if something needed my attention, and I could just go check and see, oh, it's working, everything is good. Or I might have to look over and just see, oh, this requires a yes or no input from me. And I would say yes, or I would say no, or change this, and then I will proceed, and it will work for another 20 minutes, and so I can continue with my life activities while the thing works and actually generates something that's generally super well done. It's not like, oh, it made a little vibe coded thing. No, it does actual work, which you'll see if you listen to podcast episodes of people in the software space and see how at these giant companies their development teams just talking to the LLMs and building things. It is amazing. And again, disclaimer, you have to be careful what you do. There's security implications. Please listen to the Web Talk Show. We have a few episodes on security, AI security, etc. So those are important to listen to, and do your research, of course. But like anything, a drill is a fantastic tool. You have to be very careful when using a drill. Not everyone should use a drill. So in that sense, if you have a small business, if you haven't explored even a little bit what an AI agent can do for your business, it's important that you do. And if you have any questions, please send me a message. You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, of course, but you can't do much there, but you can leave a comment there if you want. And on our website, also Perez-Carreno.com, you can visit us there, leave a comment there. I receive them immediately. I read them all myself. My email inbox is always clean. I read every single email. And it's important that you try just to see what's possible, because you're going to be using it, whether you like it or not, now or in a few months or maybe in a few weeks. That's where we're going. So there's going to be AI everywhere. It doesn't mean it has to be AI slop. It doesn't mean we have to do everything with AI. That's not the point. The point is, like when the computer appeared, you may have not necessarily liked it or understood what it was for, but then you saw the benefit of using the computer versus writing everything down. That doesn't mean I don't write things down. I have a pencil and I still write some things down that I don't want the computer for. And there's a lot of creative ways that we still interact with matter that are better enjoyed without the computer. The same goes for the arts. Of course, you can create music with AI. That's great. I have done it and it's fun. And sometimes you can get an idea out there that you might have not done before, but you had the lyrics, you don't quite know how to put it down in music, and you use an AI tool like what's it called? I don't remember. There's this tool. It's Sono, I think. And yeah, it comes up good. But is it much better, perhaps, to play a real piano versus an electrical keyboard? Yes, I think so. I've always thought so. I have a good keyboard that I've used in theater productions and things. And yes, it sounds good. But do I prefer that over playing a real piano with strings? No, never. I will always prefer the actual piano. Convenience wise, yes, I can take this, I can put it in the car, take it somewhere else, use it with headphones. Same goes for a drum set. Is it the same thing? No, it's not. It's very good. But there are things still, I think, that are enjoyed more if you're using the real thing. In terms of music, the analogness of real instruments, I feel, have a much greater enjoyment factor because of the just sheer scope of possible variations in the waveforms. This might seem technical for some, but when you play a note in an instrument, any instrument, real instrument, or with your voice, you are releasing a number of frequencies out in the air, and they sound waves and everything's bouncing around, etc. But when you record that in a digital medium, you are just getting an approximation of that, which may sound very good. And if you use very high quality microphones and very high quality digital to analog to digital converters, yes, it'll sound very good. But it will never sound as good as if you record it into an analog recording medium like tape. If you grab a tape, record like an actual tape, reel to reel tape, and you record something into it, same thing, and you listen to it, you would be amazed. And many people have not had the privilege to listen to that, to listen to an actual analog recording. There's a world of a difference in everything you hear because we hear only up to a certain number of kilohertz. And everyone's different, but that doesn't mean we don't perceive the rest of it. And so if the approximation algorithm that you're using for your recording is considering that it can filter out everything above 20,000 because you won't hear it, then all of that fidelity is gone. And whether you hear it when you have your little headphones or not, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't have felt the rest of it with your body. And so, if you ever have a chance to go to a theater production where they're still using analog consoles, which there are a few, the voice is richer, the instruments are richer, the experience itself is richer. And I say all this, which is not related to AI, because even with AI and how helpful it is, if you say, "Oh, I'm going to use AI to write everything that I post, all my content, all my blogs, etc., then you're going to run into the same situation. And that's why I'm making the analogy. AI written content, unless you seed it with very good information about how you write and your personal voice and your content and the way you think, etc., it's going to sound generic. It's going to sound like what people call AI slop. I was listening to this video the other day where there were these two musicians in a studio, and they were talking about a study that they made where they figured out why you could hear some of the artifacts and some of these AI generated music. And they dug into it, and it turned out it was because of the sampling. So the way they trained the algorithm was all based on Spotify music or YouTube music or things like that, that were all pre-compressed. So they were already compressed for listening on these platforms. It wasn't the original master files. And so these artifacts came from the compression. And so it's like compression over compression over compression to then generate something which sounds good. It's okay. Most people won't realize it, but a musician might. And if they had taken it even from the masters, regardless of it being generated by AI, if they had trained the models on the masters, then the quality of the output of these AI models would be drastically better. So just things to think about. These tools are amazing. It doesn't mean you're going to replace everyone. And I'm also saying this to make the jump to this doesn't mean you're going to replace your staff with AI. Yes, there's going to be costs and things like that because you are restructuring. You might not need these people to do this thing. Now the AI can do it, but you need people to do this other thing. So if you don't need people in the front, maybe because the AI is handling lead capture, generation, whatever, you're going to need a lot of people in the back to produce everything that these are selling. So it all balances out in the end. And so being prepared for it, I think, is very important. And that's why I recorded this video during this live stream, just to let you know that there is a space to use it. You don't have to use it to replace everything you're doing. You don't need to use it to replace employees. You need to use it to understand where everything is going so that you are not left behind when all your competitors are using it and you're the last one out. So I hope this helps. And if you have any questions about all this, please shoot me a message directly on our website, perez-carreno.com, or any of the platforms where I'm streaming right now. You can just send a message. I read them all. And if you have any questions about your business, please, no questions asked. There's no gatekeeping or anything like that. Just reach out and I'll be happy to help you see what can be done for your particular business, especially if it's a small business, brick and mortar business, local business, and you're just confused, like, I don't do any software things. Where do I fit in with this? Or if you have more traditional type of business, trust me, there's a lot you can do that will make it better for you, such that your team has a lot more time to do other more important tasks. At least that's the way I see it. So I'll leave you with that. And if you haven't heard our podcast, we have the Web Talk Show podcast. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. And then if you go to webtalk.show, that's where you can find it as well. And wherever you're watching this, make sure to like if you like the content, and subscribe if you are on a subscribable platform like Spotify or YouTube. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers, everyone.